matter that was before us at our last meeting, which we tabled, so I would ask for a motion to move it to the table.
So moved.
Second,
Seconded.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're,
Ms. Elder,
Oh, downstairs.
shouldn't we wait for this, the person who's taking notes?
Oh, I-
She slipped away.
I didn't realize she had disappeared.
Yes, and she will not know who made the motion.
Now, when you turn down the air conditioning,
It's just,
it's just,
Sally, you have powers.
Can you turn it back?
Seconded, voted upon, approved,
Which one, the,
Vandermeer.
what, I'm sorry, say again?
It's Vandermeer. And we are back to what was a hearing that had already been opened. And we had asked you to go home and think about it, see if you could submit something. Do you want to come up to the table and tell us what you've done?
Sure. So originally, well, first we had the two things. One was the safety issue about the line of sight. So we figured we could, which was bringing, I think, the fence back a certain distance. What was that distance? Do you remember?
Well, it was 30 feet from the point of intersection.
Which was we were in a fraction by how much?
Not very much. It appeared to me to be approximately 2 feet.
Right. So what I did was I shrunk the fence from its existing position back 3 feet. So I took it back 3 feet and then angled it, and then we figured that that would be good. So it's 3 feet in one direction, 3 feet in the other direction to create the corners that you see.
the fence is the double line?
Yes, double line that's going around. The other, which one are you looking at? I gave you two versions. I gave you one which was the landscaping one I made, one which was a very simple one, which shows you the picket, the variant section, and then the rest of it's the privacy fence. So obviously the variant section is the privacy fence, but the slighter blue is the amount that we're talking about at this meeting. And then the other thing, so the original the original variance that we were asking for on the privacy fence, which was extending from the front of the house to the existing fence, came into 33 feet. So what we did was we also shrunk it back from the original 8 feet 6 inches back further, which gave the reason we did it that way, which would then we'll start to continue the picket on that angle. So we'll stop the privacy fence, continue the picket, and then bring it around the corner. The reason that is from the porch section, that also gives us, from our line of sight, from our patio, basically takes it, just starts to break off that intersection. So basically comes a little bit from the middle of the intersection from our line of sight coming this direction. So we brought it back 8.5 feet. So which really comes down to 25 feet, and I'm not sure if it's 25 and a half. I did this, it might be 25 and a half feet is what we're talking about.
I'm not clear.
Originally from 33 feet.
Okay, wait, I'm not clear. If I'm looking at this one,
Mhm.
I need to label it. So this is, where was, you
Here,
said you
I'll
took
show
the
you.
fence back.
Yeah, sure, I'll show you.
Okay.
I'll show you. Want to see the pen? This is the original variance that we were
No,
asking
no, no, this
for.
isn't the part I'm asking about. My understanding was you
Total.
said you took this back.
Nope, this back. This back. So,
Okay, So
yeah,
the
because
line
this is
of the
never the-
fence,
yeah, we're not
okay, the
talking about
line
that.
of the fence is still where it was before.
yeah. It's
Okay.
because that's not what we're changing. What we're talking about is the front of this section is what we're talking
Oh,
about.
I see what you're talking
We're
And
talking
you're
about the
ending it
distance
here.
from the side of the house to here to the front of the house, right? Because originally, because what this is a 6-foot privacy fence, right? So
Right.
what we're talking about for this variance is that we can now put a 4-foot privacy from here to here, but we want to continue a 6-foot privacy.
So,
From that
and
direction.
the three, and,
So now this is subtracted 3 feet for safety.
right.
This is what I'm bringing up for the original. There were two issues. We're talking
Right.
about just that variance and then
And the
also the
corner.
safety issue.
Right,
So what I did was bring this back an extra half
right.
foot for safety issue, cut that corner
When you say
back from
From
this
this-
original position.
okay.
From where it is
Yep.
now.
Wait, short,
Yeah.
Which is why I left this corner here, see, because that's what would continue right here.
okay.
But in order just to clear that point out. And then this is also sort
So
of a
this
much
is
more just
this is the picket
less messy.
fence?
Yes, so
Okay,
if
you
you
know-
look at this one, which is color, picket, so everything in this sort of purple is picket. This section is the variance section.
Give me a pen.
Oh,
Give
sorry.
me a pen.
This section is the variance.
So, wait, I'm gonna label this for myself. Tell me that I'm doing it correctly. This is the picket fence.
That is picket, yes.
Okay.
But the picket also turns around the corner. You have this one?
So the picket goes to here?
Yes.
Okay, so the picket goes
Mhm.
to here.
Exactly.
So this, so where the picket fence is here, if you had simply done the privacy fence to join up with the picket fence,
Right.
it would have been 33 feet.
Right.
By cutting this corner,
That was the safety issue. Don't worry about
Right.
that 3 feet. It comes out to 8.5.
and then how did you redo, I'm trying to get from 33 to 25.
8.5, 8 feet. Just take 8.5 feet. And it should be 25, I think.
So in
25
other
or
words,
24
okay, so
now.
in other words, the shortening is
Yes.
this and this.
This is, the 8.5 is one complete.
That's okay, but I'm just trying to read this drawing. So the shortening is the effect of the cutting the corner and pulling back to here.
Yes.
And this is
It's a
gonna be
total
all
all of
picket.
8.
So this is all picket.
Yes.
And then this is 25 feet of privacy fence.
Exactly.
Okay, I understand the picture. Okay.
Now, I want clarification.
That's okay. I'm not an architect. This is my,
Your privacy fence at 6 feet is going to run from here
to there.
to here.
Mhm.
And that's roughly what, 80-some feet?
I think the 87 is, no, it would be 87
And a
minus
half.
8.5.
Mm. Right,
Roughly 70
Yep.
feet.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
that'd be 79 feet.
Minus 8.6, so that is 8 from 17 is 9, so 79 feet.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Okay,
79 feet?
So you're asking for a variance for 25 feet of 6-foot fence
Yes. Instead of 4 foot.
beyond where it is allowed by code.
Do you have a picture of the fence you want to put up?
And the fence bordering,
It's the circle.
Manheim is going to 4
4
foot.
foot picket.
Yes.
and you're replacing that, or you're leaving it as is?
We're replacing it
Everything
with
gets
wood.
replaced.
Yeah.
all
And
the
it'll be
vinyl is
white or
replaced.
wood?
Wood.
I'm sorry.
It'll be the
The nature of
same
the fence is
color
vinyl?
wood.
No, all the vinyl, there's vinyl existing now.
Right,
That's all being taken out.
Okay.
And replaced with wood,
Cedar,
cedar.
cedar.
and it will
Okay.
remain, it
Okay.
will be
Natural wood.
stained, exactly.
It'll be stained a little darker, so
Right.
it feels a little more natural.
Okay.
Because I don't want it to gray. I want it to.
I'm aware of cedar, I have a cedar fence at home. Will it be a picket fence?
Yes. No,
No,
the section we're talking about is
Here.
privacy, but this is picket.
Show that to Carl.
This is the privacy fence.
And the rest is space picket.
Yeah, in other words, in the code, there's no problem up to
Up to that allowed
up to
house.
that point there.
Exactly.
Okay.
So this whole run would be this, and then starting here, move your hand, starting here and continuing around would be cedar picket.
And the privacy is all cedar also.
Right.
Which is nice on both sides. It's done so that it's.
The picket fence that will be along
The front.
South Manheim, in front of the house, will remain at 4 feet,
Yes.
but it will be wood.
Yes.
So in a sense, the wood would match the wood of,
Yes.
okay. Tell me about the landscaping.
That's exactly what I
This
was
is your
waiting to
proposed
ask.
landscaping?
Oh,
Yes.
that's attractive.
Some of it exists, some of it is
So
stuff
this
we've
is
done in the
proposed
last 4
landscaping
years.
and also future stuff that'll happen. So if you want to go through, You have a pen, anyone have a pen so I
Things
can do no pen
Yeah,
pointed?
this is fine. I'm not, this, no,
Oh,
well,
yours is black
don't
and
go
white.
far.
Yours is black and white.
Don't
This is
go
my
far.
beautiful color, John. Okay, when I originally bought this property, there were no trees except for this one flowering cherry that's here. I'll take that one, and I'll give her this back.
Thank you.
And this pen thing once and for all. All right, so far, I have planted a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trees.
9, I counted 9.
Oh, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, I planted 8. Where's mine?
Okay.
The
Anywho.
magnolia.
The magnolia's a bush. I don't care.
Well, it's supposed to be.
That's here. That's here, everybody. There's a nice magnolia, but that's moving. Anywho, so that's so birch, a flowering cherry on the corner, a flowering cherry on this corner, 2 flowering plums on this side, and then I have 2 birches over here. I'm using these 2 birches as somewhat of a privacy due to all the college stuff that's going on over here, and especially when construction starts in this section over here. So I was just preemptively trying to build something in there. And then also not even considering a privacy fence here since my neighbor's so close. Like I understand that why a privacy fence rule would sort of be an effect of not walling in somebody. You know, the next neighbor is over 40 feet away by the time this fence goes in, if not more.
What's over here?
What's over here is I have a rental. I have one neighbor here. I have a rental on this corner. We have the parking lot, which is going to be a construction zone, correct? Very
I think
soon.
so. Yeah, I think so.
I have a neighbor here. All right, so over here I have one
See,
neighbor here.
ultimately-
I have a rental here,
Ultimately, that's to be a park.
A building.
a building.
It's a science building.
No,
Yes.
no, no.
They came to us and showed us
No,
the
I
blueprint.
just, the latest information I have from the college is that the plan is to move the science building that had been proposed for there to another place on campus.
Oh, wonderful.
And to use this area as a public park.
Oh, cool.
So,
Well, when they proposed it to us, they said it's a geology building, or what they
Yeah,
said
no,
to me.
that was-
the
that's
original,
true, that's
which
true.
then stopped right about here. And then he said that from this point to this point was somewhat of a parkish thing anyway. That was his original thing. I understand that it's changed.
Right, they
Okay.
told us it was part building, part park. We thought the part park was a cell, sort of, as to what it was, and then it's really a building with some
I'm
landscape.
trying to think of where I got the information and from whom.
Well, but in a
Well,
sense,
beyond
it
that,
doesn't matter
well,
because
this is-
this
well, that's-
isn't
It-
the
it-
issue.
Yeah, that
may
has nothing to
indeed-
do
it
with
may-
Whether that's a
Yeah.
park or a building,
That has
I was
nothing to
happy
do
with
with
it either
this.
way, because
Okay.
anything's better than the parking lot. That's-
Except
that's-
construction.
Well, construction's gonna be tough for a couple of years,
Yeah.
but whatever. Let's deal with that. So you
there's
have one neighbor here, back to your original
Student
question.
rentals over there?
This one, well, this one's a student rental,
Across the street.
and this one has a vinyl fence that is knocked out and beaten. I have pictures on my phone if you wanna see it. Broken.
Yeah, I
So
think
this neighbor right here has a nice little.
He's an owner.
What's that? That one's
This-
mine. No, that one's mine, but,
Isn't that the broken fence?
yeah, probably, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
its second incarnation. They already replaced it once.
They did a year ago, and it's already
They should just get
down.
rid of it. I don't understand why it's there. It's not
We
never
bought
gonna
it.
never gonna work
Buyers.
where it is. But anywho, so we have this one neighbor here. We have a student rental here. They've been all right. One of the biggest problems we have, I mean, that, you know, it is what it is. This one's a rental too. Right now, I think there's a family building a house somewhere. So this one's a family rental at this point.
Hmm.
But I don't know who ever goes into that one. This one's definitely student. Then we have people living here. My neighbor Tom owns the house that's right next to me here. One of the other big problems we have is stranger cars parking all along this section right here.
Right.
So when school's in, that's always full,
commuter
always
par- commuter
going,
parking.
always
I've
happening.
got student rentals all the way around my place.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're also dealing with people walking up, coming into our house here.
What?
One,
Wow.
yeah, I had the cops there a few times.
We had a drunk
which
on
great,
the porch.
great response time from the police.
You're surprised at that?
Yeah, they were really good.
Nobody's walked in, oh, actually once we had somebody walk into our house.
You know, it's funny, I had a dream about it the other night too.
Well, no, but you know, I mean, this is terrible to say, but it was right after our neighbor died, and I assumed that somebody was reading obituaries and thinking it was an empty house, and they just weren't smart enough to get the right house number.
So along with those cars, we have an extremely busy intersection right here, as you know. Tons of vehicles going in and out. We have also along here, we have the middle school, which sits here, and the park that sits here. So we have people playing tennis, football meetings. We have all the buses coming through in the morning. This is a constant highway of people coming through this U-turn to get to this section over here.
And not neighbors.
And nobody
not
that
people
we know. So, which is causing a problem also for me, is that I don't feel like I have any safe place to let my son walk outside without one of us present. And that's one of my biggest concerns. Along with also just giving myself. As you can tell, as I said, I was planting all this stuff for landscaping, planted all these trees so far.
What
The
are the
trees.
X's with
What's
the
that? I'm going to
X's?
explain exactly what that is. This is the first strike, which is trying to get trees in to grow. Because Mr. Buchanan, who lived in the house before, loved flowers. If you guys all know who he was, and from what I hear, didn't like trees as much because he liked his
They
flowers
interfere
growing.
with the sun. Yeah.
So I hit all these trees and planted all these first. The boxes that are here are other things that we talked about to sort of break up the wall of the privacy fence. So these are projected places where I'm going to plant. The landscaping, this is all to scale except for the trees and stuff like that. I didn't have time to do that. But, well, because I don't know exactly, I don't exactly know where they're going to hit. You know, I mean, like, because it's like I have a gas line there, I have a power line there, I have power lines that this runs that break down this way. So in considering trying to break that up with certain things, I'd like landscaping at this point, I have to see it before I can start to like plan and go out and take a look at stuff and talk to people and talk to gardeners and talk to the, you know, say Adams or whatever about how it's going to grow, what it's going to do. Like landscaping is a much longer process to try to figure out. But what I'm planning on doing is breaking that up because I have one birch here. I've always been thinking about planting 1 to 2 more trees here. And then what I would probably do is I would add these ones out here, these trees, in order to sort of give a cross effect. So one would be on one side of the fence, one would be on the other side of the fence, one on my side, one on that side.
And what would those be?
You know, I don't know yet. I'd like some dogwood. I would like, it really comes down to trying to figure out how things are going to bloom within a certain amount of time.
I'll give you a
Because
suggestion.
it can't
Even if we didn't approve the 6-foot fence, say we did approve, I would suggest that you get junipers, fast growing ones, and plant them the way you're talking about. In a few years, you won't have any problems with anybody seeing into the yard. I mean, it's,
but in a
I
few
mean,
years,
with
but also
having
the
a
other
child,
problem
you
is-
have to have a fence.
Yeah, but that's the other
Okay.
problem is that
But if you were to plant junipers, I mean, pretty soon you've got a 10-foot fence, and it's year-round because they're evergreens.
yeah.
Yeah, I would, I
But
would
that was
think it would
that's
be
and
good
that's
to
also
have
the other thing is to
evergreens.
try to figure out the consideration of how it grows, how big it grows. You know what I mean? Because
You
I
can
don't
always-
also don't
you
want
can
'cause-
always, you can always stop the growth
by
by,
topping it.
yeah.
But then that creates a lot of weird things
But
too.
that's a,
I've seen the topping process.
well, my neighbors did
Makes
that,
it look
and
weird.
within 2 years, the things are,
It grows 2 heads
oh
sometimes.
my gosh, they're 7 feet high. What would you say, Rich? They're 7 feet high and they're solid?
Yeah.
And it's only been, what, 2 years? 3 maybe?
Not those fast nowadays, though, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's 7 years ago.
Well, go
Anyway,
down, go down John Street,
Yeah.
between Oakwood Terrace and Grove Street, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
right.
And that's only been 2, maybe 3 years. Go
Okay,
fast.
so-
And you don't have any deer up there, so you don't have to worry
I
about
don't know
Well,
what
we
you're talking
do.
about.
it. You do?
They sleep in our
All
yard.
over the
Yeah.
place.
What do they own, this village?
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
They actually sleep.
On
We have 2
32.
babies that like to sleep right
Next to
here
the traffic.
and right here.
Oh my
One
gosh.
takes that tree and one takes actually right behind this bush. They come in and hang out, and they also decimate my garden.
No beans this year.
They eat everything, or they'll just take a bite out of it and leave it.
Mm.
That cabbage is finished. But anyway, so then this is all projected. So there'll be stuff between that stuff along the fence also. So there'll be stuff growing here, stuff growing here, stuff growing here. This whole hillside of grass will get taken out and be replaced by myrtle. The steps that are here where the gate normally is, those will be removed. At a certain point, we're going to hopefully put a porch in the front to just cut off that straight look and then kind of bring this in. So that's actually going to bring the house out another 8 feet. Hopefully, you know, depending on whatever approval and stuff like that we have to go for with that. But that's just the projected plan. Bluestone gets moved around here. This all gets bluestone. This becomes a herring. This is all tar now. This will all become a herringbone stone driveway, which will then match in with the common driveway that we have.
At the present time, you enter and leave the house
Yes,
from here.
exactly.
This is where the driveway is,
That's where you pull your car in anyhow.
Yes.
yeah.
So it's closest. So closing off this doesn't make a lot of difference.
Closing it off. Which one? What do you mean by
The
closing it off?
the gate and the path.
Oh, this gate here. Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Oh,
nobody
this
ever
gate right
uses
here?
that.
No,
It's
no.
completely unused.
This was what Ralph's house was. There used to be steps here. So what we're gonna do is when the fence is put in, the privacy fence will have an access this way, just for fire safety and whatever. And then over here will be the main gate, and we'll build steps at some point through here. It's a small hill, it's not big, but then the walkway will come that way, and then it'll lead into the house.
Do the driveway just out of curiosity
Quarrels.
so that it drains rather than,
Oh, this driveway?
Yeah.
Oh, we have to figure out something with drainage, because what they're gonna do right now, my neighbor's adding an inch of blacktop to this. So I'm gonna have to deal with that at some point because of that lip that's gonna be right here. So that we'll have to figure out. I was hopefully gonna beat them to the punch and have that in the summer, but the patio, the cover, a screened-in porch took longer. And never got around to it. So that's that. I mean, that's what's in my head that we don't always talk about.
Carl, when did this fence ruling go in place?
I'm not sure if I can find a date on that.
I mean, it hasn't been that long. I mean, it hasn't been 20 years. Yeah?
Yeah,
20
it has
years?
been.
It is a bit of a standard feature in a lot of zoning ordinances, something like this, if not this exactly, regulating fence heights at certain portions. I'm gonna see if I can try to, if our code gives me any.
That's all right. If Rich says it's been 20 years, I didn't think it was that long. It's all right.
It was well established when we put mine in.
Actually, I think it goes, almost 30 years back.
Really?
Yeah, because, when we bought our house, it was pointed out to us that the fence as it was would not be something that could be.
What is it, the town that put it in recently?
I'm sorry?
Was it the town that put a fence ordinance in recently? No?
I
Well,
asked for 6 foot
okay.
privacy fence long
I
enough.
thought I'd remembered. Guess the years just meld into each other.
That's right.
do you have a photo of the house?
Here,
Here, it's in the
Yeah,
other
there's-
Oh,
In the folder.
oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
So,
here,
okay.
if you wanna see.
Okay,
Pictures.
what I would like to, well, I don't have my picture. I wanted to see it from the street.
Oh,
Well, here.
You can.
Here.
hold it with your fingers.
Oh, okay, that's what I was asking. Thank you. Okay, so wait, take this back. I don't know why I don't have mine. So, are you able to mark this where, given the reducing the length of the privacy fence and giving the,
I actually have
Cut.
a photo for you that has, I put
as a marker?
I put markers in for you guys if you stop by to see what it looked like.
He's probably talking about from about here to there.
Do you have any idea, well, an easier way to ask would be, do you have any idea how long these panels, pickets are? 8. Okay, so essentially, you're taking, give or take, one whole panel. Probably a little bit more than
Oh,
that,
yeah.
but essentially one whole panel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why I can't find
Yeah, that would be way back to
Do you
here.
have that, Katie? Do you have
It
yours
would
that
be
has
to
this
here.
picture where you can see the panel?
She's got it on
Oh,
her.
that's what that is.
Yeah.
So taking that one panel out
So you basically exchange that panel for something that's,
for the picket.
for, yes.
That's the
Okay.
corner.
For the catty corner and the, yeah, it
Yeah,
also.
well, but the
right,
catty
exactly.
corner's made of
Okay.
pick, is
Right,
the picket,
right.
does say that.
So, I'm gonna, this is zoomed in, so I'm gonna
Right.
zoom out, okay? That's the marker at 6 feet right there. And that's,
So it's
That's the
just
distance.
over.
That's the
It's
distance.
just over this.
yeah, that's the distance it's cutting back.
Okay.
3 feet comes into about right. The angle
That's where
comes
the
into about
angle
right
is.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all marked out up there in paint.
Right, right.
So I basically marked it in paint and stuff like that, so if you were stopping by as you did
Yeah.
last time, you'd be able to see.
Okay.
So we will have a 6-foot fence that goes from here to here
Yes.
and extends well in front of the main building.
Yes.
Well, I'm pleased that you considered the landscaping. I'm not quite sure if we granted a variance, how we could ensure the landscaping.
Oh, it'll happen.
It would be, well,
Well, we've owned the house for
it
4
would, it
years
would
and
be,
planted
it would be
9
a
trees,
condition
so.
of the variance. And then if it were not met, it would be up to the building inspector to take some kind of action.
But in an effort to avoid that, let me just ask you, you've obviously put a lot of thought into this, and I thank you for the drawings that you provided. Is there any way to, in conjunction with the installation of the fence, begin the process? For example, the garden boxes, is there any way to commence that in conjunction with the fence such that you're still undertaking the planting, but that the garden boxes might be there at the same time?
They're already
Oh,
there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, that stuff is there. That's not, a lot of it comes down to like when I can plant. You know what I mean? Like it's not, if I decide to do birches, and that's probably where I would want to go because they're softer, bushier, and they're going to cover up more than, you know, they're going to break that pattern up more. I can't plant those until next.
Okay,
I don't see the point in, linking the landscaping to the fence plan. The variance we're being asked for is 25 feet
No,
of
no.
6-foot fence.
no, it could be a condition of the variance. You grant a variance, let's say, for a fence that exceeds 4 feet, with the condition that that fence be landscaped. That's an appropriate condition to place upon the granting of the variance.
And
That's how they're tied together.
I understand.
once these trees are planted on the outside of the fence, are they at such a distance from the street or from the, whatever the demarcation is, that they then fall under the requirements of the Shade Tree Commission, so they couldn't just be cut down? You know, a new owner couldn't
Well, that's,
20 feet. So once they plant these on the, I'm talking about the ones on the outside of the fence. Once they plant them on the outside of the fence, if they are less than 20 feet from the street or whatever, they can't be removed without being replaced.
Without the permission of the Shade Tree Commission.
So the plantings that were done on the outside of the fence would in effect be permanent too, because the Shade Tree Commission would require that they stay there. So if they sold the house and somebody came in and kept the fence but wanted to cut down those trees, they couldn't.
I actually think even the ones that are inside the fence would still fall under
Well, they
20
may, but
foot
I'm not
taller than
concerned,
20
I'm
feet.
less,
Okay.
that is,
Oh, you're concerned about
I'm
the
just
outside.
talking about,
Into the future of the outside.
Right.
I
I
understood
understand,
where she
I
was
understand
going.
that.
Yeah.
I'm much happier with what you brought in today. I have one remaining concern, and for me it is a serious concern. and that is, this is a fairly sizable piece of fence put on top of what is already a rise. It becomes very, very visible. I am concerned that because it comes out as far as it does, beyond, well beyond the front of the house, that it affects what we think of as the viewscape, the streetscape, how it appears as people move up and down South Mannheim. And I will tell you why I am concerned about it. We granted a variance on Oakwood to a house that wanted to extend its fence beyond the front of the house to the sidewalk. You may know the property. It is right next to the Chabad house. The Chabad house is on the corner of, is it Lincoln?
Senator.
Center. When I drive up and down Oakwood, that fence hollers at me. It seems so out of place. I realize why the lady wanted it, and I know my board granted it, and I don't remember even voting against it. But I didn't realize at the time how it would affect the streetscape as you travel up and down Oakwood. I'm concerned about this here. Sally, did you want to say?
I drive up and down that street too, and if everybody was maintaining their properties the way I agree they should, I could agree with you.
Okay.
That's all I want to say.
Well, I understand, they've got a small child. They have a small child,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Yes.
And I can understand why they wanna have a 6-foot fence there, all the way up, so that the child can play in here without anybody seeing them. Now, 4-foot fence, even though there is a rise there, I mean, somebody can look over the fence. 6-foot fence, they're not going to. In this day and age, with what goes on in this world, I agree with them about having the privacy.
Well,
And I don't think that fence is out of line as far as being, and I'm a designer, out of line with a good taste.
I guess I could buy that argument were there not a 4-foot picket fence running in front of the house. It just doesn't hold then.
Well, it's what he's saying though is absolutely true. It's the people parking, really. The people that are lingering on that side in their cars, sitting in their cars, on the phone. They're not doing that in front of our house. That's a highway. You know, it's the fact that there are strangers on the side where we're asking for the variance.
I'm aware of the problems you present. I think there are other solutions to the problems. If I were offended by cars parking along that street, since it is such a traffic street, I would petition that there be no parking on that area. And I think there's a good possibility that the trustees would listen to that argument and restrict it.
Carl, on Church Street, there are a number of houses that have 6-foot fences extending between the front of the house and fairly close to the sidewalk. And I don't think when people drive down Church Street, that's something that they notice.
Or
And
Platic Hill, even though it's the back of the house, it's an entire corner lot that's fenced in. I mentioned it before.
Yeah.
Right here, the big stone house has the entire lot fenced off with 6-foot privacy fence, and it looks beautiful. It's an
I think
aesthetic.
that's 8.
It's 6.
Is it?
Right here.
The old Van Gogh house.
Yes.
Whose house?
Which one has
The old Van Gogh house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it
It's the
looks
gold
tasteful. I mean, it looks like it's an
And that's kind
architectural.
of up in the
choice.
same way that
It's
we're
right
talking
down
about.
at the corner of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's to some degree, it's how the fence is put in. I appreciate what you're saying about the landscaping and the landscaping outside. I also have sympathy for people who live in areas that are trafficked by students. You know, there's noise, there are headlights, there, you know, as you say, people talking on the phone. Sometimes you don't realize they're not talking to you. You know, it's an area where I think there is some call for privacy. In terms of coming down South Manheim, by having moved it back so that there is a line, you know, a sight line that is clear, you know, that was concerning to me. But I think, you know, if you get that, you've got some uniformity there. And I think this is an attractive way of doing this. If you want to, I mean, I would kind of like to see these 3 pages substitute the diagram that is appended, it's on page 3 of the original application. I'm concerned about the paperwork being right so that 20 years from now.
Well, this is the drawing you can submit. My guy is waiting for this meeting. He's coming tomorrow to do the drawing, to finish his
Okay,
stuff
but
up.
what I'm saying is I want the paperwork that gets filed away to be the right stuff so that 20 years from now, somebody can't say, oh, but we were granted a variance to take the fence out this far.
No, you'll get all that.
Okay.
You'll get all that once this is approved.
Right, but I feel comfortable that this is an attractive way of dealing with it, and if you wanna say, you know, have them put a couple trees out there,
May I add to that also?
yes.
Speaking about the distance from the road, and that was one of my larger concerns from last meeting. And seeing how you're taking it back, it looks like, you said 3 feet. I think that will help when you're up on that corner, because I know when I went there and I looked over, I thought the fence would be in the way too much. Now, as Katie was saying, with having the trees there, I also think that would help with the aesthetic value, and it wouldn't make it look so forcing, overbearing. I think the trees might help. One thing I would recommend would be though is to make sure that the trees you do plant don't end up blocking that line of sight, so they don't get large enough where they overextend out.
Absolutely,
out there.
which you know was my concern on the last one when that was an option on the table, is that just seemed like each time we said something like that it does not bigger and that would become a problem.
Right, and
Which is more a problem. And that's why I'm saying I can't exactly say what trees are gonna be there because it is a lot more homework in the sense of I have to worry about the power lines, I have to worry about how big they get,
Yep.
I have to stay small, so.
And
that's just like that,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
just homework that needs to be done
I'll
afterwards.
make a suggestion.
I just had one
Trees in before you put the fence in.
I just have one other, I guess variable to mention as well is, thinking about it too, is when you're on that high traffic road, especially near the school, that fence may also help block some of the noise coming from that area. So if you do have lots of cars, lots of sports teams
Buses.
and buses,
Yeah.
that fence may also help with the noise that is just emanating from that side of the road.
And I would like to say apropos the fence, I'm much more comfortable with this scheme. But I would like to say, and I would like to see that what you plant on the outside of the fence be evergreen. Because otherwise, in the winter, when the trees are bare, it kind of, bare.
Bleak.
And then you wind up with exactly what is of concern to us, which is this kind of wall effect.
But isn't everything bleak at that point?
Yeah.
Well,
Isn't
no,
everything kind of bleak at that point?
Evergreens covered with snow is actually quite lovely. But, and I don't care if they go above, I don't care if they're trees and go above the fence or not. I just want them, you know, I don't need a wall of trees to make me comfortable about the fence. I don't care if some of the fence shows. But the softness, especially of something, of evergreens, it's camouflaging the fence that's really important to me. If the fence is going to come out this far, and I do think this is better than the last one, still, for me, I'm looking for something that camouflages the fence. And things, you know, I don't know if we can say evergreens. I don't know if we can stipulate that.
You can stipulate anything you want to stipulate as a condition of granting a variance.
Okay, well, that would be my, you know, I'm not saying it's a make or break for me that we stipulate it, but it would certainly make me feel more comfortable.
What's your reaction?
Which I think I would start to go more towards your juniper. I mean, more towards that. What is that? What the like the
Well,
thinner?
you
It's
could
like
have-
it's like the thinner tree that goes up like this,
Yeah,
right?
But they're
It's an evergreen.
So what happens if
It's
it's-
a branching instead of a pine.
well, you
Yeah,
can, what
'cause that
she's
one that
talking
spreads.
about, what she's talking about is modulating the space of this severe plane.
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
12
Oh, I totally
weeks,
understand what you
Yeah, where you can have, you know, this going on in the front can be very nice.
Yeah. It's again, I mean, I would have to look into all the options that are out there because it's just it's dealing with
To put the inside-
because one end of it is that it's going to be like I'm going to have to be the one that probably deals with it,
Mm.
just like I'm the one that's cutting the grass on that hillside.
Oh, yeah,
You know what I mean?
gotcha, yeah, that's.
And so each time it needs to be trimmed and cut down, I don't want to be coming from meetings every single time. You know what I mean?
You might
I
want to.
want something that stays very,
You
very.
might want to think about tall shrubs rather than trees.
Yeah.
But that's the
Yeah,
thing.
there are
it's like,
different,
right,
they're all different kinds of.
That's what I'm
they're
saying. It's all.
different
It's very
kinds
much
of
research.
use,
I understand
all
exactly
kinds
what
of-
you want. But it's like this. I
Yeah,
can't say
and that's what I'm
exactly
trying
what
to
it's
say.
gonna
I
be.
don't care.
Yeah.
My
I
concern is
understand.
evergreen, whether they be tall shrubs or trees or what, I don't care. But my concern is that.
Yeah, you would like something that year round to just
To
keep,
put
break
azaleas.
that down.
Yeah,
Azaleas
yeah,
would be
I
good.
don't care.
Just one thing.
Azaleas.
Azaleas.
I love azaleas.
Well, I have a whole
Since
Japanese
we're
garden.
small,
What's
it's
that?
very
He's a
I have a Japanese
difficult
garden
to
with
deal with
azaleas.
Oh, nice.
Azaleas.
For anything.
And boxwood.
But you're
Boxwood.
asking for
Boxwood
evergreen.
doesn't get real
Yeah.
big. It gets
Right.
real-
So these are all options. I'm
Well, you come over to my house and look and
Look
see.
at
I'm happy. Trust me, I'm happy.
That is a very, very difficult thing to require or request,
Well,
Okay.
okay?
yeah,
That's personal experience.
right.
But nonetheless, it will be planned. This stuff will be planned. The landscaping will get done.
Are we ready to have closure on this?
I am.
I would entertain a motion then.
I so move that we accept the variance,
You want to grant the variance?
grant the variance, yeah.
Sorry.
With any conditions?
No.
Wait,
So
I
moved
would like
to-
to, grant the variance per the drawings presented to us tonight, which would be appended to the original application, replacing the drawings with dimensions that came with the original application. That was way too wordy, you can edit it down a little bit, but you get the idea of what I'm saying.
Is there any way to label and identify that document?
Yes, I think there is, and by the way, there may even be the ability, in a case like this, where we're not talking about major construction, to actually purge the files of an earlier submission. But in either case, what we could do is, there are documents that we keep and that we also put void and X's through, just manually, right? Right, that, so I'd be happy, I understand exactly
Yeah.
where the board's coming from on that, and I'd be happy to make it clear that these drawings here are the ones that are definitive, should the motion pass.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's,
Okay.
Is it, I don't know the rules of how to do this, but I would
Jump
like
right
the
in.
motion to include
this would be a condition.
the condition that there be,
Well, wait a minute, we have to
the-
amend my motion. Okay, so we amend it with Katie's amendment.
Amendment to Yeah, replace the drawings on the original applications with the drawings
Yeah.
presented tonight.
And what did you wanna?
And I would like to amend it so that we're placing the condition on it that there be, tall enough plantings on the outside of the fence that it,
That would soften the
yeah.
expanse, the visual expanse. Is there a second to
Preferably.
that motion as amended and as conditioned?
Second.
You need a second on yours.
I second Katie's.
Thank you.
I'll second yours.
Are you ready to vote?
Got that, Albert?
Just like mine.
Is that confusing enough now?
Was this
That's
a
why I have him.
continuation of the hearing from the last time?
Yes.
Then you need to close the hearing
Yes,
first.
of course. I'm sorry. Thank you. Motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Sally. Now, we have, rather than repeat the motion, we have a motion on the table that would grant the variance with the amendment that a particular labeled drawing will be a part of the variance, and with the condition that there be appropriate plantings in the front of the fence that would soften the overall massive appearance of the fence. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
One nay, okay. The variance is granted with,
Carl, excuse me. I'm gonna play Robert's rules. Her amendment first needs to be voted on, then her amendment second, and then the main motion is amended.
okay.
Just in case somebody doesn't
All
like
right.
one of those amendments.
Okay. I-
Really?
Yes. So it's, you got the main motion,
I got the main motion,
she's amended it,
okay?
Yes.
it's been seconded. Now you have to vote on her amendment.
If he accepts the amendment.
If I accept,
He can take it as a friendly amendment, both of them,
Yes.
then you wouldn't have to worry.
Yeah.
well, I did.
You can withdraw, can't you?
Hmm?
She could withdraw.
No,
No,
she
no,
doesn't.
no, no, no. No, I accepted
David
no.
is saying he's accepting as a
If
friendly
he
amendment,
accepted both
amendments.
amendments. We don't have to do that.
I hope I haven't forgotten all of my Roberts.
Not if the person that made the amendment,
Carl, he's taking it as a friendly amendment,
Yes.
okay, because he is supporting what Katie is asking for, he's supporting what Ellen is asking for.
Right.
Therefore, Alberta just has to show both of those as friendly amendments accepted by.
because I accepted them.
You do accept.
I did before.
He was very friendly about it too.
Okay.
Believe me.
I know I'm getting a little senile, but I know what I said.
I think we have acted appropriately and approved the variance, and good luck with it.
Thank you.
And may I just say, your son is phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
And he's had about enough, and if you wanna see all the different shrubs,
Oh, yes, thank you.
come over and look.
Oh, cabinets too.
We've got many different evergreen shrubs.
Burke Street.
Rich Stephens is here, or you want to come up to the table?
Will we continue the meeting with business? Will we at some point continue the meeting with business? I have some general business issues.
All right, let's deal with Rich.
Yes, yes, I understand.
Before we adjourn, you bring it up.
Okay.
This is my son, John.
Hello, John. Welcome.
Who has been and will be a partner in a lot of my properties.
This is the son that you want to occupy the rebuilt house. Is that right?
Occupy the rebuilt house? Well, we're gonna occupy it. This is the question of whether or not, well, let me start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. 40 years in the business, one thing I've learned to do is you research first before you act.
Very good.
I don't always do it right, but I do it. In this property, before we purchased the property, we went in and made sure that I would not have to be appearing in front of this board or my board.
Mm-hmm.
There was a building on the property that over a period of years, a man named Peter Wilson owned the property. Over a period of years, it was a problem for the building department, it was a problem for the community, and Peter was no solution. Peter would take down part of it, would build up part of it. It was a two-story barn that sat there in disrepair for many, many years. From the time I sold him the property 20-some years ago till the day I bought it from him. Prior to us buying it, I came in and checked with the building department to make sure that I would not need any special permits to rebuild that barn. And was told, and have a letter in the file downstairs, and a letter with me, because I also learned in 4 years of doing real estate, you get it in writing,
Okay.
that says, I would not have to do this. We then lost our building inspector. In the interim, I waited until I needed at one point to actually go in and start at least doing some excavation work in order to come up with some design work for footings on the future building. I informed Kurt's office, let everybody know what I was doing. We hired a building inspector. I went in, he knew what I was doing, and I went in there and I removed what was left of this crazy project that Peter had, what was left of this old two-story barn that was there, and cleaned up the whole property. I hired Cliff Appledorn, who's a very good designer. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Does a lot of work on Huguenot Street, does a lot of work for Mohawk. I hired Cliff to design a barn to replace the one that was there, that was in keeping with all the buildings along there. Came back to the building inspector and was told, we can't do this. And that's why I'm here tonight.
Did he tell you why you could not do it?
Yes. He did not recognize the grandfathering clause. He cited all the things in the zoning that says you can't build a building on that lot. And I know that. It wasn't a vacant lot. It wasn't a new use. This was replacing a dilapidated building that was there. I could have kept the old building that was there and repaired it wall by wall. I could have gone down there and, kept the old junk that was down there. But instead, what I wanted to do was put a nice building on it. And it was clear with Kathy at least, and the building department, that I was going to come in with a brand new building. When I came back to him with those plans, it's when he looked it over and said, wait a minute, you can't build anything in that zone. The lot's not big enough, the setbacks aren't right, the whole litany of things that I knew. I mean, I've lived the zoning for a long, long time. It's the grandfather, it's the fact that that building was there.
Yeah. He did not recognize that it was
I'm
grandfathered.
going to defer to Kurt on that a little bit.
Yeah, there may be a limit to how much you want to hear about the back and forth and the somewhat tortured details of it, okay?
I'm willing to recognize that we're dealing with the current building inspector who has the authority.
Yes, and has the accountability. When Kathy wrote a note that was not fortified with any reference whatsoever, to any section of the code, she wrote that. About a week later, she was no longer here. The name on the dotted line for the building permit and the certificate of occupancy were going to be our present building inspector. Okay, so this was not easy for him, and it was not enjoyable. As far as not recognizing the grandfather clause, I don't know what that means, because there is a section in our code that refers to non-conforming uses. Is that the one you mean?
Well, no, it's the idea that there was a building there that needed repair. It was in dilapidated condition. They have been working for years with Mr. Wilson to try to get that thing repaired. Years. was a kid, Henry Freer had the only garbage chute in New Paltz. And that's where Henry Freer kept his garbage truck.
Okay, so
It was
it
his
was
shop.
not a residential building.
No, nor do I intend to make it a residential building.
It was a garage. It was a garage.
It's a garage barn.
Okay, and I'm seeing something here that's dated 5/12/13 where you say, I purchased this with the intention of renovating with my son for a home and art studio for him.
There's a home there, and the art studio would be in the barn.
So
It's my
the
granddaughter.
home is separate
Yes,
from the art studio?
absolutely.
Okay, that was not clear from that sentence, I'm sorry.
The home is tiny. It's 19 by 22. It's tiny. At the time we purchased this, my brother lived around the corner in the railroad man shack. And part of the other idea was John would be near his uncle, who was ill at the time, he's since passed away. But doesn't change the fact that it's a very small little house, and John has need for a garage, and John has need for more space to work out. He's a professional musician, he's an artist, but we are not building a separate residence here. We are building a barn, and on the second floor of that barn will be this finished space. But it'll be the same use on the property. We will not change the use on property.
Actually, if this, it was discussed, of course, that if this were to be simply a rebuild of what was there, this, regarding this detached structure, we would not be here this evening on this application. It was the proposed art studio with some amenities, a bathroom and 2 stories. And that's what triggered us being here. There also is.
No. It always was a 2-story building.
I didn't say that.
And the rec, we just did say 2-story.
I said it is a 2-story proposed, yeah.
And if you go into that file, I dare you to tell me what this building
Okay,
is.
we should be here for an appeal of the code enforcement. We went through a lot of trouble then to provide a use and area variance applications for something that could have been better suited so far as an appeal of the code enforcement officer's decision. This is, the difference is, I mean, the garage is not habitable space and what's proposed is, so. But really, we're really into debating whether the code enforcement officer was correct or incorrect. And of course, this board has the opportunity to hear that too.
Could you clarify something for me? When you say habitable, you mean a human being can be in there. You don't mean, that's not the same as residential.
No.
What, no? Yes?
Okay.
Answer, yeah,
I may be able to
I'd
have-
asked an awkward question.
I may be able to have the building inspector at the next meeting. He was not available tonight. But
I think we need to have. the
habitable space
present.
means that it's suitable for habitation.
Yeah,
That
I-
means
What do you mean by habitation? Living or being in there?
Finished space.
I mean,
guess
I have a wood shop over
Right,
in my
that's what I'm
garage.
saying.
Okay.
Okay, is that habitable or is that a workshop?
I'll leave that for the building inspector to answer because I really can't make that distinction. At some point, that's why we have
Yeah,
a certified and qualified
I would-
building inspector.
Look, nothing about the qualifications of the building inspector. I'm very happy with him. He's a guy who knows the law. I think what the problem is, did I have the rights to refill the building?
Well, you have. I would like most of this discussion to be deferred until our next meeting, when we will have the building inspector present. So some of the issues being raised really are answerable by him professionally and are not by us. And we need that information. I would point out that the property is located in the floodplain.
Yes.
Whether or not it's grandfathered or not grandfathered, it is a non-conforming use.
Correct.
And the changes that are being proposed, for instance, the addition of the studio, is in some respects contrary to our local law, which says that you don't change a non-conforming use unless you either one, make it conforming, or two, make it less non-conforming. So in effect, that's an issue which we clearly have clarified, but one that you need to be thinking about.
So the problem is is the bathroom.
Pardon?
The problem is having a bathroom in the building.
Is that, or, I mean, then isn't it also the habitable, I mean, an art studio is there because someone is gonna be in there using it. I don't understand well enough the distinctions.
We're not the first folks to debate exactly whether a detached structure is, at what point it becomes habitable and usable. That's an age-old question that will probably never be resolved for as long as there is zoning and land use regulations.
Kurt, I would ask you to ask the building inspector, present at our next meeting.
Yes, also, by the way, I do want to point out, he did prepare a letter as required by law to get here before the ZBA.
Okay.
So he can provide more, sure, I mean, there's more detail he can provide, yeah.
We, I think we need at this point to table this matter.
I just wanted to
sorry,
have
go ahead,
a
Rob.
clarification. Earlier you said it was not for residential use. Did I miss that? Because on the
I'm
application,
not adding a residential use to
not,
this property.
not adding, but current site is residential.
Current use is residential.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly.
And may I ask for a point of clarification that I
Sure.
don't understand? And this is a part of the procedure stuff that I wanted to ask about anyway. I don't understand how do we come to a public hearing when this is the first time, unless I've missed something, that this is brought to us? Is that the procedure, it comes to us in the form
No.
of a public hearing?
No, this is, consider this an exploratory, informational kind of situation.
So was this published
Yes.
as a
Yes.
public hearing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was a non-conforming publishing?
We
in effect?
We didn't get it until tonight.
Right. So I would like to,
I turned this
okay.
in weeks and weeks ago.
Okay, so I would like to ask, as part and parcel of the postponing it till the building inspector can be here, et
Yeah.
cetera, that we also have, following that we have a conversation about procedures for how things
Right.
come to us.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I will entertain a motion to table this to our next regular meeting. Second?
Yeah. Are we coming back to dispute this age-old unresolvable question of what's habitable space?
Yes.
What we're coming back for is to see whether or not we can have a resolution to this.
Okay.
And
Is that, you said there were some issues that you wanted to discuss with
Right,
him. Is
right.
that the
And
issue, or can we
those-
discuss?
And those issues are best addressed, we think, by our building inspector.
Okay.
But I want to ask, is this a public hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
It's been noticed as such.
Then what you're doing is you're not closing the hearing, you're going to.
No, we're gonna leave it, we're gonna leave
We
that
have a
open.
motion
We're
on the
simply-
table.
We're simply tabling this to our next regular meeting.
And that would be September 10th?
Yes. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign? We will see you next month. Thank you. Now, Ellen, you wanted to talk about something else.
Yes, thank you. So,
If a building burns,
No, but just tell me the
No,
second.
well, some of it, that's not really grandfathered, not really part of the building.
where would I look in the code to find something to support your proposal?
I'd have to go back and look myself.
Because, I mean, I'm looking, you're trying to find
Yes,
something
and
that says.
I would
what
like
you're
to
saying.
know also.
Yeah. The fact is that, there was a building there.
Okay, well.
And if I have to go back, it was there before, it was there.
I'm gonna need one.
I saw there was something on one nicer.
Okay.
All right, so
Oh, I've got the,
partially for other, just other reasons, and partially because I was so surprised to see this. I have questions.
Okay?
First question, who sets our agenda?
who sets
Essentially,
our
Kurt's
agenda?
office sets the agenda.
I'm
I
sorry,
do,
so-
and I wanna say in this case, I made an error in not convening to discuss with the chairman the agenda, and that is the procedure. I might do.
But you set the,
Well, I might draft it, as I should, and then, however, the chairman, whether it be the planning board or the zoning board or even another board, would then tell me if it's okay to go.
okay, so for my notes, I'm saying Kurt drafts, chair sets.
Yes.
Okay, or approves, okay. Next question. Are there, and if so, where in the code or where are, any place are there? When do we get it? When do we, the ZBA in this instance, get the agenda and get the documentation, which is, I think, a separate question?
Yeah.
When do we get the agenda? Are there time frames that are standard? And if so, is it that they're in the code, or is it just historical, or what?
The only thing by law that I know of, you must have your meeting, your minutes 2 weeks after.
Wait, don't go to the minutes yet.
No,
I'm on the agenda.
That's for this group to decide when they want it.
Okay, so we could, for example, have a conversation amongst ourselves and say, we want the agenda, I'm making this up now, 1 week in advance of the scheduled meeting. And then that would be the protocol.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have the authority to do that.
Okay, so I'm gonna put a little notation here to say, when I finish my list, or whenever, I would like us to do that.
Okay.
Okay. When do the minutes come out?
Alberta?
The minutes, I believe Sally was starting to say that legally we're supposed to have them out 2 weeks after the meeting.
Okay,
The biggest issue we're having right now is I'm so new at minutes that it takes me too long to do them, and then Kate has to go over them again because I have never done minutes before. So I'm learning, and my process will get quicker, but it's not very quick right now.
okay,
So legally, we're supposed to have them done, I believe, 2 weeks.
okay,
And they'll
Post.
be emailed?
would it be?
We can email them to you, and we can hard copy them to you, or both, whichever
Okay.
you
I
would
actually,
prefer.
could you defer that question for a moment, because I have it lower down on my list in a
Well,
different
I've
way.
already taken care of that. You don't have to ask it again.
So could I just, because I fully understand what you're talking about. I mean, I'm a newbie on this, and I'm, trying to get up to speed also.
This might be helpful in terms of process. In the past, once the meeting was over and the secretary had prepared a rough draft of the minutes, that draft was presented to me for review
Correct.
to ensure that it was accurate, that if there were need for any kind of changes, they could be made before the minutes came to the board members.
Correct.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
They still come though as draft minutes to the board.
till we approve them.
The
Right.
board,
Okay,
it is the
so,
board that approves the minutes.
so without putting you on the spot, because really that's not what I'm trying to do. Do you think in the next few months we'll be on track?
I hope so.
Actually, yes, and I wanted,
I hope so.
I'd like to add that it is, it's my responsibility to to provide an advertisement sufficient for the village board to authorize me to fill a position. Of course, Alberta and Katie are kind enough to be performing
Fill
this.
this position?
Well, not Alberta's position, but the position of a planning and zoning board assistant, where we might like.
Is that the person who would then be here taking the minutes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes. And then-
okay. So there's an end in sight, we just don't know what it is. And
Yes.
then, and then, at some magic moment, we're gonna say, okay, from here on, we have the minutes 2 weeks after the meeting. At some point, we're gonna say, yes, this is what we are doing.
Mhm.
Okay, and that won't be,
We have the authority to do
could be
that.
in my lifetime.
The
It will
law
be.
says it is a must,
Okay,
okay?
okay,
Whether
Well, you never know how long your life
give
is.
a reprieve for a little while is something else.
okay.
But the
Okay.
you have the right to expect the minutes 2 weeks after this meeting.
Okay,
Alberta has already told you it is a learning curve for
Right.
her.
right.
You
And I can
are
live with that.
allowing flexibility in that. That is your choice. If you remain silent, the obligation is on Alberta.
Okay. When are applications to us due? How far in advance of the meeting? Or at what point do we not take applications?
14 calendar days prior to the evening of the meeting itself
Wait,
is when they would be received by my office.
okay, my pen stopped work, oh there. 14 calendar
2 weeks, yep.
days, Kurt receives.
Yes.
That's the deadline. Okay. At that point, can I request that at that point, they're put in our folder and they're either emailed to us as PDFs or a notice is emailed to us that the folders are now complete for the following meeting?
I would request email.
Yes.
That's what, and that's what that's what Kurt's been providing. I think I find it very easy for me, at least.
But I
would
want
like an
them in
email,
timely
I would like an
fashion.
email that the hard copy is in the folder.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I don't want an email to me that I've gotta run off
No
Well, I
20
can't
copies.
print it
That's,
off,
that's
so.
consistent with what our planning board recently required. And by the way, the ZBA has the same powers as our planning board with regard to what's called by our code, rules of procedure. Board of Appeals shall, consistent with village law, prescribe its own rules, form, and procedure, and all its deliberations, resolutions, and orders shall be in accordance therewith. So the conversation we're having right now is very appropriate. It doesn't take a code change, which is a burden off of everyone.
Right.
And this board can vote just as the planning board did. From now on, please, in all cases, provide us with hard copies and.
Is this 21259?
1257 of this. case, so,
57.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kurt,
Can
Can
I
I-
just say something
As
before
the-
the
sorry.
stuff gets distributed? This is sort of, on the, I would like someone to look at it carefully and make sure that one variance and one variance only is being requested. And if somebody is turning in a request for a variance that is multi-part,
Mhm.
I want them broken out into separate requests. And sometimes there are two variances implied. I mean, a very simple thing is if you want to, subdivide a piece of property, one of them may not be conforming, but you very well may leave the other one not conforming in a different way. So I would like, before we get these and start pouring over, for somebody to look at them very carefully and say, yeah, this really is a single variance, or kick it back to the person and say, you really need to make this 2 requests or more.
Can we put
So
that on the
was
form?
my question
That's only one
to
variance.
Ellen.
His is only
And that
one.
is, don't
Actually,
you wanna give
actually,
some
his is-
time
Wait,
between
I'm
when
sorry.
a thing is officially received before the meeting, it's 14 days calendar date. Don't you wanna give your planner an opportunity to review everything to make sure that all the documents needed are there for
I do, and is it a question of do we need to require a little more lead time? Because I think oftentimes we are requesting of the building department to jump through a lot of hoops when they are not what I would call overstaffed right now. And, I mean, I think we need to be realistic about what we're asking someone to do.
I agree.
So it may be that we want to have applications turned in 3 weeks in advance and sent out to us 2 weeks in advance.
That may
Does
work.
that give you enough time to look at these?
Yeah, but then you have to change.
That does.
But does that
Yeah,
change?
but then you have to change the
code?
The
the
code.
requirements, right?
The code says 14 days, right?
Well, actually, I haven't found anything in the ZBA section that says 14 days. It's in the paperwork that we hand out, which is these boards are intended to be able to modify.
Okay, so the 14 days is what the practice is now?
Well, written practice by our forms, but I have yet to find it in the code.
That's what I was asking. So it's not the code.
Not that I can find, at least I don't.
So if we have to adjust the form, then can we find a way to adjust the form so that Katie's point is is called to the, even if the form filler outer is saying, I don't understand this, and calls you, and you then say to him, oh, actually, yes, what that means is that if you have 2 variances you're requesting, which it sounds like you are, then you need to do 2 of these.
Yes, or 2 fees perhaps. So
Or whatever.
Yeah, there are several
Whatever.
implications. And actually, I didn't get a chance to mention that. I wanted to say, I wouldn't be able to provide it to you immediately after receipt on 14 days. And the same, in the case of the planning board, there actually is a provision in our code that actually is hardly workable, but it's there. It says that we receive things also 2 weeks in advance, but that 10 days before the meeting, the building inspector or the planner must have investigated everything to make sure that the information is appropriate to be received and considered so as not to waste the time of our volunteer citizens.
And does that that's in the code, did you say?
For the planning board, yes.
So if we wanted to mimic that, we would have to change the code.
No.
No,
No.
I'm looking through right now, I can't find anything that says 14 days for the zoning board. And
So we
perhaps-
can make that part of our procedure, that it's 3 weeks in advance of the
Right.
meeting,
Right.
and 14 days to us, or
Can you
whatever,
change the
10
date
days
on
to us,
forms?
whatever it is, I don't care if it's 10 days, that's okay.
Easiest.
Yeah.
Okay,
What,
I mean-
what we want to ensure is, one, that our planner or building inspector or both have had a chance to review it,
right,
to know that it's ready for us, and to get it to us within a reasonable amount of time.
and that we know, so in other words, I'm not coming over here to keep checking my folder to see if something is in it, and then I've screwed up and missed coming over because it's close to the meeting, and that's when stuff is in it. So I would like the courtesy of noting, of informing us
Yeah,
that
Well, he
there's,
just said
that our
that before,
folder,
he just
yeah.
said that before.
yeah.
Can I-
I think that, as a board, we perhaps need to make the point that, if I'm not mistaken, we don't even have in the village anymore a full-time building inspector, is that true?
That's right.
That's true.
So, on the one hand, if the village wants to, for whatever reasons, not have a full-time building inspector, they have to have demands made on that office that are consistent with having a part-time building inspector, and that means that things don't move as quickly.
Right.
That's the trade-off we as a village have chosen to make, and I think that's gotta be made real clear.
Well, and I think that if they're codifying
Point of order.
Is the
Yes.
inspector part-time?
That's an
Yeah.
executive session
When did that happen?
discussion.
When Kathy left.
for us or for the board?
Well, the specifics.
Why did they decide that?
It is a
I'm
personnel.
not exactly
Yeah.
sure. the
Okay, I'm
reason.
sorry, but I was just saying that
Financial.
in terms of the requirements,
Right.
I think as a board, we need to make the statement that, we want this done right, and a certain amount of time is required to do it.
Then I suggest that you ask your chair to write on behalf of the zoning board of appeals your concern and your feeling that there is a need for a full-time building inspector
Write me the note and I will take it to the board.
I guess what I heard was that the ZBA is trying to work with my office, and I appreciate the sentiments. I don't wanna.
Yeah, I didn't mean to step in anything.
Well-
She made her point very clear, Kurt, and I think I gave
Yes, okay, thank you.
direction.
Can I?
Why did the village decide that they didn't need a full-time building
That is
inspector?
an inappropriate question, and I
Don't
won't
wanna
answer
talk
it.
about that.
Oh,
Okay,
I just said
I think
it
I'll write
was
question though.
an executive session topic,
Right.
and you wish to discuss the particulars of an
Oh.
individual.
So
Okay, I
there-
don't
all
wanna
right,
get
I didn't know
far
what
into
you were
it.
talking
So there are two more points on my list, if you will indulge me, and
We will indulge
I think
you.
they're not executive session material. How are public hearings handled by the ZBA, and how far in advance are they noticed? And is that in the code? Is that in the code?
Yeah, well, the procedure is in the code. As far as whether or not the initial meeting is a public hearing, many municipal ZBAs, including ours, I believe have had the practice that in what we feel might be rather straightforward area variances, whether they're granted or not, are generally listed as public hearings initially. In the case of this particular application, it's obviously not only is it much more complex, it involves numerous area variances, but also a use variance. So there, I think, best advice to myself is to confer with the chairman and make sure that the idea of not having a public hearing at the initial meeting is the right idea.
And part and parcel of that is, that's made simpler by the procedure whereby your office has appropriate time to review an application and say, this could be done right away, or no, there's more to this than to do it right away.
Yeah, well said.
I am very happy to report that Kirk and I have a very good working relationship, and ordinarily, we would not have a meeting in which we had not previously planned what needed to be done.
Right, okay. And then
The
my,
question that Ellen asked, which wasn't quite answered, and that is, how many legal days do you need to notify for a public hearing?
I do have the answer to that.
I'm sorry, was that a question to me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm clarifying a question I think was asked.
well,
Yes.
the question
How
wasn't
many-
answered.
yeah.
How many
Sure.
days does it have to appear in the paper?
Sure, okay. The newspaper publication is the one piece of it that the village, specifically the village clerk's office does, and I appreciate that. And that is, that it would be an advertisement in the newspaper or one of our two official newspapers, 10 days prior to such hearing.
oh, well, that's interesting, because then that sort of fits with what we're now saying about the applications having to be in 3 weeks in advance, and then giving your office approximately a week or whatever it is, so that certainly if something is going to be noticed as a public hearing, by then we should have the information, because otherwise you wouldn't have approved it as ready to go as a public hearing.
And it also gives that office time to contact the applicant and say, whoops, we got a couple
Right,
requests in here.
Right.
And
right. Okay. Last question. How and what is entered on the village website? I know this is an ongoing and a much larger issue.
Say it again.
How and what is entered on the village website apropos the ZBA?
I have no idea.
So minutes get posted on the website, do they, for the ZBA? I went on the website, the village
No, I don't think they're
website,
supposed to be.
and clicked on the zoning board of appeals. And there were minutes, I didn't write it down, but they were like maybe from March.
there you go, March 12th.
Yeah.
And we haven't approved
The approved minutes, when they are approved only, will they get posted to the website? The other thing that will get posted is the, sorry, drew a blank, public hearing. the public hearing notices will get posted to the website and as well as Facebook at this point, and the 2 newspapers.
Okay,
So
and
that we are fully covered, they can't say
Right.
that, you know, it wasn't out there.
what about the agenda?
The agenda usually gets posted when it gets approved or sent to us. I was not here this week, so I didn't do it, but, and I haven't been online today. I don't know when this week's agenda was
Not
created,
nearly
so.
soon enough to provide your office with proper, in this case, it was,
I do know that the public hearing notices were out.
When
in
were
that
the
10 days.
last minutes approved by this board?
Must have been March 12th if they're there.
I'm sorry, say that again?
If the March 12th minutes are on there, that
They
must
would
be
have
the
been
last
approved.
time we've approved.
So you haven't approved any meeting?
Haven't gotten any.
April?
You haven't gotten any
Well,
minutes?
there was no meeting in, was that April and May? There was 2 months that we did not have a zoning board meeting. So that would have been,
No, you had an April meeting, because No Place Like Home first.
and then there was certainly at least 1 month without.
there was definitely 1 month where we had no zoning or planning board meetings.
June.
That whole month. Was that June?
Yeah, 'cause that
Um,
was the,
Yes, June was when we were at.
because last month we talked about,
This.
So May must be there. I just
and then
don't know.
May was the second No Place Like Home, April must have been the first, which was my first meeting.
Okay, so May must be in the record, not on this computer, but in our other computer. May must be there. June was missed, so I have July, and now this is August. So I believe that May is already done, and I'll make sure I check on that on Friday when I'm in. May to be announced.
Who updates this? It says that it was last updated Tuesday, June 25th, 2003. And I mean, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but it says, please take note that there will not be a meeting of the zoning board of appeals on January 15th, 2013. That's January 15th, not June.
It is our office that will post anything to the website. One of the things that we're going through currently is we are working on a new website that will be a lot easier to post to, a lot more user friendly, and more appropriate and more keeping with the times to now than when what we have as our website currently was created. That's a very old
I think a good
website.
question to ask too is, does the last updated notification, I know that's on the zoning board page, but is that the last time that page was updated or the website as a whole? Because it might just
Yeah,
have
that could
updated a
be.
different section.
I believe it's the
and-
website as a whole.
Okay, but here's my concern then, if I were not familiar with the zoning board of appeals and I came here and I saw that there was not going to be a meeting on January 15th, I would think, this is not a place to come for information.
Right, and that might be
And I
something,
don't mean that unkindly, but I mean, that does kind of,
It is a very grave concern of the village board as well.
okay.
what, I guess one question I think that I have for anyone to open it up, would be that in the case that we find that one application has multiple variances, which we're saying, would we then allow other applications to be handed in or after that 14-day period? So for instance, I hand in an application, there's 15 days until our meeting, it's reviewed, it takes 3 days to review, so that now that is now past that 14-day cutoff.
And now you know.
And but now we know you need more applications. Do we allow that, or do we say, no, this application has to go for the next meeting?
Maybe we have to have some leeway there, and if it's not major distinctions or 27 rather than 1, we would say okay, and if
There's
not, we
something,
would say.
there's something too loose in that.
How many How many variances have we dealt with where there was more than one variance per
I can
application?
think of two, right
Yeah.
off the bat.
And which one?
Two
Last,
as well.
Yes,
technically,
the
the
one we
one we
just
just,
went over.
the one we just went over on South Manheim, they were asking for this, and it ended up being, like almost 2 variances that they were, we found that out last time, so.
The one
As
that,
well as,
Were, were the two variances in the one we just went over? There was one variance there for extending the fence,
For area.
25, well, it was originally 30 feet, 6 feet high. Where's
Right,
the
so-
other one?
So one of the variances is going 6 feet high, and the other variance was going too close to the curb. That we didn't talk about that second one tonight, because it was resolved since
They
last month.
withdrew it.
They withdrew it.
Oh,
So
okay.
technically, they.
Well, I
had
missed
one-
last month, so that's why.
what was the one that you
Yeah.
were so upset about, that was where he wanted to put a second house on, was it on John Street?
Well, I
Was
think
it-
that the thing was, the way he was proposing to do the subdivision, it was a very convoluted.
Is that the one though that
statement.
you're thinking?
But if you granted one variance that he was asking for, by granting that, you effectively subdivided a second piece of property, which was now non-conforming.
Right.
So the request was to make one non-conforming lot, but in the process of making one non-conforming lot, 2 non-conforming lots were being made. And, you know, I'm kind of slow. It takes me a while to figure this out. So I'm looking at this thinking, this does not look right, and these numbers aren't adding up. And I don't think that's something I should be trying to figure out.
So
No.
may I actually answer my question, or at least pose an
Please.
answer? Because after thinking about this, it does seem that it should not be the penalty of either the you know, our board or the offices that handle these applications to have to rush to make the work up. That if there are multiple variances in an application, it should be pushed to the next meeting. That way, you know, maybe Kurt's office can say, please be very careful and make sure you fill out thoroughly, so it has to be pushed back.
If indeed an application is properly reviewed,
Right.
then the applicant should be informed, can't take this to the zoning board
Yeah,
until it is separated.
Okay.
and then that may have to go to the next month.
But I also think in fairness, we're just going to have to assume that what I'm about to say, we're gonna have to apply to everybody. And that is, you can't forget, you all know much more than an applicant knows.
Then some.
A person could apply to you in good faith, as I think Freedom Couple did,
Yes.
Yes.
having no idea that they needed to. That you were really talking about to. They made an application in good faith,
That's true.
Yeah.
okay?
That's true.
When that application, and I think maybe there's a problem with the forms, maybe there needs to be greater clarity in the information sought in your forms,
Yeah, I think that's true.
okay? And
Okay.
when that application comes in, pretend I'm the applicant,
Yeah.
okay, and I bring you the application, you can quickly look over, make sure I have everything I need, not, you know, but just, you know,
Does it look in order?
does it look in order, so that the person doesn't feel that they turned in what is requested, or on the other hand, not made to feel that they can't ask for additional information.
I don't know how the applications are submitted or how they're
No.
taken in, so
I
maybe
can-
I can.
I can speak to that, sure, actually, with this position that having been created that I occupy, this should be done by me, and the time should be taken to do that. The fact that time doesn't always allow, and I appreciate the zoning board's recognition of the fact that a little more time may help, but what should happen, and let's say the community does not have a staff planner, the building inspector, zoning administrator, building inspector, is required to review an application, let's say even for a fence, and identify all the variances necessary. As we found out, we only found out at the last meeting, that's not the way, I don't mind saying it all, it's not the way it should happen. And you should be, and really, zoning board members, regardless of whether they are senior board members or new members, should not be expected to have the technical knowledge nor take the time. So whether it be a community's building inspector or a director of planning, that's me. And now at the same time, there's a lot going on in the office downstairs. It's sort of like running a retail operation of municipal services. So,
But holding that aside, this board should be able to ask any question that they believe is appropriate to the issue before them.
yeah.
Okay.
So-
Answering as
On the other
honestly as
hand-
possible.
On the other hand, the applicant, should be given the opportunity prior to coming to this board to have given his or her best foot forward because by the questions that were asked, and they were all appropriate questions, it was very clear 2 variances were needed.
Right.
It was very clear they didn't know that.
Yeah.
So let me
So
just,
I'm trying to balance this on
I'll
both
tell you what,
sides.
there's a couple of things. The responsibility is really, don't think of these items as the membership's it's my office and the applicant.
So-
One or the other should be pointed to as having perhaps missed something again. So it's my thorough review because we have a staff planner in this community. Otherwise, it might simply be that of the building inspector. So in this case, I might work with the building inspector or even just do it myself. And then as far as the applicants, applicants don't like writing out detailed answers to 5 questions for area variances. I would like, the biggest gift to my office would be if all applications were consistent with one another as far as the level of care and detail that went into it. In some cases where there are larger projects, you're going to have planners, other technicians, lawyers preparing them. When you have a fence application you're here for or another area variance related to your home, it's likely you're gonna prepare it yourself. We obviously, as most communities, we do our best to meet those citizens halfway.
so I just want to point out, so this is the short, and I don't care about which application this is, I'm looking at the form. The short environmental assessment form, does everybody fill that out?
No, actually, we should identify as part of the review, as part of the, when we identify the need of variance, and we're about to hand them an application form, I should, or someone else should manually remove that in the case of an area variance where it's an exempt action. Some things are so minor that in no way could they be conceived.
Because I'm looking at some of these, what is it? Will proposed action comply with existing zoning or other existing land use restrictions? If we're asking a mere mortal that question, that person's gonna say, huh?
Well, that's another issue because that's secret to
Federal
state law.
form?
No, it's a state law.
State law,
So in
okay.
other words, folks who are doing a simple area variance are not subject, those actions are not subject to
And
secret.
that's what Kurt's saying.
Yeah.
He should
However-
get that out of that particular thing.
So they don't sit there thinking they're supposed to fill it in and
Right.
not know why.
By the way, the five questions, even though one of the 5 questions is really the determining question that on balance, analyze the benefit to the applicant versus the detriment to the community, if any. That's the most important question. However, there are 4 other questions that precede that. They are just as technical, for lack of a better term, as those questions. And that we can't forgive, that's state law. So no community in New York State can absolve the applicant of the obligation to prepare those answers.
The other thing, does the zoning board of appeals approve
This
their
sheet in there?
application form that they want to use?
I'd like that to be a collaborative effort with
Well,
me.
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think your form really needs.
We actually
You don't
proposed
have the-
something, didn't I brought something?
Yes.
Yes.
There have probably been several documents given to me and by this board.
here.
One of the things, just to give you an idea of how out of date they are, is
Which
we don't
isn't
have
filled in
them.
at all.
even electronically on a computer. If that's not a symptom that we need, that it's time to redo them, I don't know what is.
And that
That's
should
what
be
he's
on the
talking
website,
Well, do you
that
need like
here is the zoning
Yep.
board
Do
of
you need
appeals
a volunteer
application.
to come in someday and just type some of that stuff up and, you know, I mean, if you had a little volunteer clerical help, could you know, would that make it easier for you to get it done?
Well, I appreciate that. However, again, the task for me is to fill a position whereby we have someone to cover the planning and zoning board meetings as well as perform certain tasks, mostly for the planning and zoning board chairman during the day, as well as help handle the phones as we've promoted our municipal code assistant, municipal code officer. So there is a need for that, and it's full-time when it comes down to it, but we're gonna do the best we can.
So is this what Sally's referring to as a conversation that we would have in executive session?
No.
No,
No?
they're two different things.
Okay.
But my point is that I think, however you accomplish a revision of this form, it definitely needs it.
Yes.
And it
is,
needs to be on your website, and
Yeah, and I mean, I feel pretty strongly about letting people know what the criteria are that we have to consider.
that should be on the website too.
Right, but I mean, it should,
The
I
question
really want.
that you always
Yeah.
pose.
Yeah, that's something they've gotta understand, that, you know, like, putting nice counters or pretty windows in doesn't mean we can say, oh, forget that other stuff, it'll look so pretty. You know, that we've gotta go with the
But you
code.
also have to understand, how do I say this? I think Kurt said it very, very nicely in that, you know, the couple that was together, you know, their
Glasses.
understanding of.
I lost my eyeglasses.
You weren't wearing them, Rich.
You didn't have
were
them
not
You didn't have them
wearing
on, Rich.
Not,
And you can't have mine. Let me just go another way. Somehow, there has to be, in your own mind, the differentiation of people who want to exploit the system, as opposed to people who are just trying,
Who don't understand the system.
who don't understand the system.
And I don't mean that condescending, because we're
No.
unfamiliar with the system.
You said it very
and-
nicely.
What-
That's what I wanted to say.
In other words, the average homeowner versus the developer.
well, would it make sense to have sections of the code in simple language on the
No.
website?
No. No, you
We
can't.
have a document which we give to an applicant that has the criteria that we are considering for an area variance and for a use variance. And depending on the variance they're applying for, the chair tries to explain whether or not all of the information has to be considered in arriving at a decision by the board, or whether the information is advisory to the board, and the board can act without having specific compliance with all of the criteria.
But Carl, if it is on the website, which I think it should be,
Yeah.
then I, as a potential applicant, can look at that and say, I wonder what that means,
Yes.
and I can ask a question.
I'm not sure how the website's being designed or what efforts are going in there, but I do know that a frequently asked questions section
Ooh,
or
good idea.
Mm-hmm.
or other types of documents or documentation, or I'll say video, but
I was
I'm not-
thinking the same thing, actually.
just because I take
I wouldn't go that far.
I take a lot of this from
Not that long.
what we do at
It's
Mariners,
expensive.
but
No, Rob will do it for you.
The frequently asked questions.
the frequently asked questions
I think it's a
section,
great idea.
No, we.
having the right documentation, it goes a long way, and I think that would be the needed information for people that aren't familiar with the code.
Yep.
I also would err on the side of making it the code tougher to exploit and offering that information to the people that are really trying to understand it. Does that make sense? Going back earlier to what you were saying earlier, if you make it too tough, the average person may not understand it. I would say try to get all that information up front so that they can understand it, and it protects the heart of the code more readily.
Actually, speaking of videos, I think on the,
I was just throwing that out there.
No, but on the Department of State website, you know, the New York State Department website, there's, you know, like one of these little courses you can do. And I
Web
think,
netting stuff.
I think they actually have a little video, or maybe it's a PowerPoint within there that goes through the criteria that we're to consider. I did a lot of stuff and I
Well-
was stuck in the chair.
Well,
It's very hard to understand that if you are listening to that video.
Oh, okay, all right.
Well, to say, but also, you only, not with the video, but a well-organized document
Yeah,
has a very, very useful potential, and to kind of getting the ideas across. So it just, it just
But
needs
I
to be.
think there is a limit to the number of frequently asked questions. I mean, I think there's a finite number of questions
Yes.
that people might want
read.
to ask and need an answer to
Yeah.
before they even consider asking for a variance.
yeah.
So again, I'm not sure how the website's designed, but if you have any input or that might be one.
No, but I think all of the boards, Alberta, ought to be asked, perhaps, by Katie, what suggestions or things are important to that board that they would like on the website, the links. In other words, the planning board might want X, they think that's the most important thing, whereas the ZBA might think Y is the most important thing. So I think it's a good idea to ask, if we ask each of our committees and commissions, are there things you want conveyed on your portion of the website that will help us help you? I think that's very important, I think that's a very good point.
I think users are good for other committees as well.
Yeah.
And I think it just shouldn't be the planning office should have that opportunity, you know, if there are things that Kurt feels are important to have up.
Is it an option for an applicant to make an appointment with you prior to making the application?
Yes, it is, and I only wish that I had more time for it, because I do make those appointments. I sometimes find that there are other deadlines I'm not meeting, or I'm not allowing time for emergencies. For example, Friday was a very busy day with regard to
Emergencies.
yeah, emergencies and water coming in through roofs and residences, businesses. So I have to try to provide for all these things, and I guess I'm gonna continue, I've been trying to refine that skill for 24 years, and I guess I'll continue to do it for the next half.
But I think Kurt and I also agree. I think if people feel you want to help them,
Yeah.
that encourages them to want to do a good job.
Right.
It does. I must tell you the truth in this community or almost any other, and that is, folks would rather have a long discussion with me and convince me that they don't need an area variance or a variance of any kind.
Yeah,
Okay, I mean, let's
I can
let's not
imagine.
be, that's,
If I'm John Q. Public and I saw on the website that the planner was willing to see me about my application for a variance, and I was just an ordinary person trying to do the right thing, that would encourage me to pick up the phone and make an appointment to make sure that I knew everything I was supposed to provide.
I can tell you that in the case of tonight's agenda, I spent, in advance of last month's meeting with I'm sorry, Vandermeer, am I getting it right?
Yeah.
Is that name right?
But it depends on whether
spent-
you're talking about him or her. They have different names.
That's true, okay, I spent, with Rachel Gibson, we probably spent, again, it was her giving up her time and me making time, probably at least an hour and a half, over the course of 2 or 3 appointments before. Unfortunately, that didn't make for an overly smooth process, although I'm very satisfied with the discussion we had tonight, and we distinguished that application in a way that allowed us to determine ultimately that it ought to be granted. In the other case, I can't even tell you the amount of time that Rich Steffens and I have spent in my office discussing this
Right
over
there.
and over and over. I think Rich can vouch for that. It started with Kathy's review before her departure, and it was a big deal because Rich made a decision to buy that property, and then the fundamentals of it changed a great deal. So we spent a lot of time talking about it.
Well, I think there's nothing wrong with spending time talking about things that comes up with open.
A good solution.
Right, but I think that what Kurt is saying also, I mean, I'm concerned just about what we are asking people to do with what should be, in this case, I think 40-hour week or 37.5-hour week, you're supposed to be working.
Basic, yeah, I mean, and then of course,
Yeah.
meetings and other stuff.
Right, but I mean, we've got to be realistic about what we expect the employees of the village to be able to do with the time that they
Yes.
have.
And
And
that is why I made the suggestion I made to you earlier.
Are you suggesting that we ask for an executive session this evening?
If you, I don't care if you want. But David was the one, well,
I think it's a little late. I do want to return to your question, though, and that was, if an application comes in after 14 days, what should we do with it?
Yeah.
goes to the next meeting.
And
My
my
revision after the initial, wasn't it?
It's submitted. We found that it offers, it's actually for more than one variance. Do we meet for that meeting or do we push it back to the next? Because those additional applications would then have been submitted after the 14 days. Or after that cutoff of
It's his
the
call.
14 prior days.
Yeah, I
Well,
think we
it's
need
not my
some
fault.
flexibility in that, no? I mean,
Well, especially if it's a returning application, I'm sorry. Especially if it's a returning application, if it's new business, under what we've suggested tonight about 3 weeks in advance, I would say that provides additional time that I might say to a prospective applicant, please resubmit in the next couple of days so that there's no exception being made and I need not worry about how I'm treating one applicant versus another. Remember, every applicant that comes to me, I'm the one who has to be concerned with the equitable treatment. No one is really thinking about other applicants when they're coming to me. They're thinking about, and I don't blame them, it's an involved process, whether it be an area variance or an actual new development of significant scale. Either way, it's costing people time or money so they,
but I think you're gonna have to, in a sense, try your system first. You can always tweak it.
Yes.
You're never gonna be
Yeah.
able to come up with perfection. I mean, your heading, I think, is a wonderful model,
Yeah.
but it'll need tweaking, and I think it's fair to say, in answer to your question, let that be his judgment call. If an application needs additional, say, 4 variances, okay, they thought they only needed 1. He reviews it, he discovers it needs, it's really 4. They may be very simple, and as Kurt just said, there might be time to get that solved. It might be very complicated, and then you have to give him the ability and the latitude to say, I'm sorry, but I don't think this application is in shape to go before the ZBA.
I think it
at the
also
next
would
meeting."
depend on scheduling too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's gonna have to be some flexibility.
there certainly needs to be some, but again, unlike some other business, we have to be very, very, very concerned about whether we treat folks the same, because of course, it will be pointed out to us almost immediately, if there's not equitable treatment. It will be pointed out extremely
We
quickly.
saw that last month when the couple here were talking about fences, and they said, well, this fence across on the other side of the village has this, why can't we? And so, yeah, and that's the, I think, the prime example we're
Yeah.
talking about. The first thing, I think it was the first thing they mentioned was, it's done over here, that's all we're asking for, is to be done for us as well.
Even worse with code enforcement. It is a good example, but it's even worse with code enforcement. People seem to have a mentally cataloged library of every similar violation throughout the municipality. So,
Well, let's not go there, because I don't think we have a sterling record of enforcement.
and I have yet to find a community that really does. It's quite a pursuit.
So, yeah, so you're right, you have to.
But we're turning over a new leaf, and it's evergreen.
And guess what? It's a clean slate.
Can I have a,
Well, the young man
Carl?
from the planning board.
Receive some responses for our next meeting. Come prepared to offer policy statements that you would like to have.
In response.
Carl?
Yeah.
In response to the answers that I got for the
Yeah.
question, sure.
Good.
Carl,
Carl.
can I ask a question quick?
Sure.
When getting information to you, I know Rob has expressed an interest in only having it by email.
Well, at least attach the document for me, that's how I
Okay.
prefer it.
What is the feeling on everybody else? You would like to have it hard copy and email?
No, I want a hard copy, and I want a notification that it's in my folder.
Okay.
And
I'm not gonna print up, I'm not gonna print up.
And David, I
Well,
think,
Dave, I don't think, can I just tell you what we do on the village board, and this may solve the problem? When the agenda comes out from the clerk on email,
Oh, that's all right.
I then know
yes.
there's a hard copy for me in my box, because I like.
No, I don't mind getting the agenda. I'm talking about getting all this
But
stuff.
no, but that's part of the agenda, Dave. Okay?
But you're saying.
This is
so
what
then
I'm
you're
talking
saying
about, right here.
When the agenda comes out, it should have all supporting material with it.
So,
Is what I'm saying
listen,
to you.
all the material should already be in the folders by the time you receive the agenda. So
All
you
right,
receive the
all right,
agenda,
all right. Then I just want a notification.
So, you don't need notification to get it. As soon as that email comes across to you saying, here is the agenda for the next ZBA meeting, that automatically is a signal that you can come over and look in your folder,
Okay.
okay? So
Okay.
you don't need a special notification.
No. I just don't wanna have to copy it.
As the planning board,
That's fine.
we require all applicants give us things in PDFs.
Say that
We
again?
do.
I didn't hear you. Say that? I didn't hear you, Richard.
He said as the
As the planning board, we require all applications to be in the form of a PDF.
What if they can't do it?
Kurt does it.
No.
That was a good
But you know,
answer.
the real problem here is that we only have Kurt a certain number of hours, and we've got the building inspector for a ridiculous amount of hours, Sally.
We already discussed.
10 hours a week.
Richie,
I'm sorry, I'm just reminding you.
no, we already discussed that this evening, and I suggested what they should do.
Probably a good stuff.
But we have it all, it's just some people come to me with their laptops, and makes it much easier, all the applications right there.
So, Carl, can we put on the agenda for the next month's meeting, an executive session to
Yes.
discuss, let me be clear about what I'm
A matter
asking
of
for.
personnel?
We're discussing how we are able to use the planner and the building commit.
That doesn't go
I'm not
under
sure what we're
executive
asking.
session.
If you're not sure, don't ask for it.
Well, no, I know I want it, I just don't know how to word it.
You don't use executive session.
What I asked of Ellen was, she had asked specific questions to which we gave her specific answers. I think at this point, we need to act upon them to create policy. I have asked her for our next meeting to prepare some policy statements that we might consider adopting.
You have them in your minutes already, you did it.
Are they in there?
That's fair.
They will be.
And
All right.
so.
That's what we would be addressing at the executive meeting.
No, that's not
Oh,
what she
no,
asked.
that won't be executive.
Let me just see.
Carl, that won't be executive session.
The answer to Katie's
That
question,
won't be
I
executive
respond.
session.
It was not about an
It could be.
individual, but about a position.
I don't think so.
No. You thought that's what you were asking, and I am telling you.
Policy is something that has to be.
You want to ask that question of Kurt and or me, you need to move your board into executive session for the purposes of discussing the personnel
Right.
that
I would take your word for it, and I would say at the next meeting, if we could have an executive session early before we are punch happy, to ask,
you could do it very quickly tonight. And I would suggest you do if you were going to write the letter that you wanna write.
do you wanna write the letter, Carol?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, then I will move to go into executive session for purposes of discussing a
The
personnel
personnel,
issue.
the personnel file of a particular individual
Who are we
in the
talking?
job title of building inspector.
Oh,
I move that. Do you wanna keep moving it? I'll second it.
okay, second it.
I'll second it.
I'll take your word for it.
Well, don't take my word for it, you're asking for an executive.
Okay, I'm asking for an executive session.
And who are you inviting in?
Discussing.
All in favor of going into executive session, say aye.
Do we
No, do
have
I
to say who we're inviting?
That we're
Who's
inviting
invited?
Sally and Kurt into the executive session.
you should.
Sorry.
I know, I'm out of here.
I mean, we like you and all, but
No, instead of the planning board issues we're having also, I started going out, I thought, no, I'm back and listen to you guys. But,
They're
we're having the
related.
same kind of problems with the planning board.
Yeah.
okay. So then that is my motion to go
And
into
I
executive
second it.
session for a matter of personnel, Sally and Kurt present, and you have seconded it, and
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
That's a camera.
Okay. We are now in executive session.